Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat of Connecticut, serves on the Foreign Relations Committee, and he joins me now. Let me just start on this. The bar is high for me to be shocked these days. Obviously, I got to say, I was genuinely shocked by the fundraising email with the president saluting U.S. service members who had given their lives in Kuwait, and I wonder if you felt the same.
Yeah, I think you just have to understand that the White House is a 24/7 grift operation. Yeah, it's probably true the president didn't know that email went out, but he has hired people to work for him that are just like him, using their proximity to power to make money. Where does all of that money go that you're donating? He's not running for re-election. It goes into this vast Trump consultancy that is run by people close to the president and relatives of the president. So when you are donating to get your national security briefing, you're just giving money to the grift. There is somebody becoming a millionaire based upon your donation. So you just have to remember that that's what most everybody around Trump works on every day, is just personal enrichments. They spend a very small portion of their day, I imagine, working on things like security and lowering costs and protecting the nation.
On the point of security and the recently resigned head of the National Counterterrorism Center, who the president said today he never thought was great on security. Again, I got to say, I think it's inarguable that the war has probably increased the threat of some sort of terrorist attacks or attacks against civilians in the U.S. We've got dozens to be possibly hundreds of FBI agents with expertise in that who have been pulled off of that expertise and either been let go by the Bureau or transferred to other things. And now the head of the National Counterterrorism Center has quit. And I got to say, I do not feel confident at all in this government's ability to stop attacks like that. How do you feel?
You don't? You don't feel confident that this group of fringy clowns and gadflies are going to properly protect the United States? Listen, Joe Kent was a weird guy, right? He was a fringy gadfly. But the problem is everybody else working at the high levels of American national security are fringy gadflies. Tulsi Gabbard, right, a conspiracy theorist who seems to spend most of her time these days trying to get close to the president by conjuring up reasons why he actually won the 2020 election, is actually in charge of tracking intelligence relative to individuals who want to do harm against the United States. You mentioned that Kash Patel, when he came into the FBI, cleared out everybody who had experience in tracking domestic threats. We have seen an uptick over the last couple weeks in potential terrorist attacks, many of them targeting Jewish communities. Now, that may or may not be connected to the fact that we've stood down our ability to track these terrorists, but there are going to be consequences here domestically because we are not watching the folks who may want to do harm to us. That's just a consequence of what they've done at the FBI and at the Department of Homeland Security.
Today in the Senate, the number one priority for the president, he says, is its only legislative priority, which is this sort of voter suppression bill that would create all sorts of insane logistical hurdles to vote, get rid of mail-in voting, possibly make tens of millions of married women have to bring their passport or get new papers to vote. Republicans are pushing it on the floor. It's going to die, right? They're not going to kill the filibuster over it, I guess is the short version.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to succeed. They would have to change the rules because there's not a single Democrat that thinks the biggest problem facing this country is fake voter fraud. But, there's two things happening here. One, the president is desperate to turn the story. This war is wildly unpopular. Gas prices are going up and food prices are soon to follow. But he also has kind of run out of traditional paths to win, for his party to win this November. So the only thing he has left to do is to try to rig the electorate. And one of the things this bill does is force states to hand over their voter files to the federal government, which will allow the federal government, which will allow Stephen Miller and others to create some pretext to try to throw out some portion of the results. Right. So, this is where we've gotten to, that the president is forced to try to meddle in the elections because he can't win any other way.
I want to ask you finally a question about prediction markets. Kalshi, Polymarket, you've been talking a lot about them. I think a lot of people have a basic intuition that like betting on the deaths of other people or wars is weird and unseemly and will possibly lead to some terrible outcomes. We've seen in sports, athletic figures, including college athletes, being berated by people who lost bets because they didn't get a rebound. Well, we have our first example of a war reporter getting this. The Washington Post reporting on a Times of Israel reporter who's been getting death threats because of something he reported about an Iranian strike that lost someone money because they bet about the strike on Polymarket. And this, I think this is the first example I've seen of this, but I just was curious to get your reaction to it because you've been ringing the alarm bells about how insidious this entire thing is.
Yeah, I introduced legislation with Representative Greg Casar today to ban the ability for these prediction markets to offer bets on government action. And it's just insidious because we know that there have been people inside the Trump White House that have been making bets on war with Iran. Now, nobody should be making money off of life and death. These are essentially bets on when dozens of people are going to die in Israel or in Iran. But it's worse than that because it allows people close to the president who have made a bet on, let's say, a strike happening on a particular day to give advice to the president based on what makes them money rather than what's best for national security. So there should be a complete prohibition on anybody being able to wager on life, death, famine, or frankly, any other national security decision that's being made at the White House. And hopefully people will see some merit in our legislation.
That seems eminently sensible to me. Senator Chris Murphy, thanks for your time tonight.